Long-term care is one of the most avoided topics in retirement planning, and it's not because it's not important. It's because too many people and their advisors oftentimes focus on products or one aspect of the retirement plan. As a result, long-term care oftentimes falls through the cracks. For others, it's a really hard topic, kind of like death, and they just want to ignore it. But when you avoid it, you oftentimes risk your financial security and your ability to have control over your care. But when you plan for it, especially when you're in a calm, proactive state, you create options for your future. You also protect your family and you reduce stress and uncertainty that can impact both your finances and the quality of your life. Planning for long term care isn't about fear, it's about clarity. It's about having a plan so you can move forward with confidence and focus on living your life, not worrying about the what ifs or living without options. I do want to just add one insight, and obviously it's just crazy, but the people that have needed up to this point, I now have some clients that have long term care insurance that are needing it and using it. But up to this point, so for the first 35 years of my career, all the people that ended up needing long term care did not have long term care insurance. They were adamant against it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I can't stress to you the importance of having a plan. And I mean, even though some of them had money at the tune of $12,000 a month for years, I mean, it gets quite expensive. So you just want to make sure you're looking at the bigger picture. Long-term care is a critical element of your financial plan, and creating a financial plan is the first step. I really encourage you to download our financial freedom formula to help you create a financially secure life. You can access it at themillionaireinsider.com/FFG. But this guide is going to help you to really create the step-by-step plan you need so you have the clarity and confidence you need with your big picture. And long-term care is just one element of it. So again, you can access it for free at themillionaireinsider.com/FFG. For today's show notes, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/168. The Millionaire Insider copyrights all materials and intellectual property. This information is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to replace the advice of any advisor or specialist or to provide any investment, financial, tax, retirement planning, or healthcare advice. Always consult with a qualified professional before making any financial decisions or changes. So welcome to the Millionaire Insider podcast, formerly the Wealth Inside and Out podcast, where we help you create a confident, secure retirement and life you love. I'm Annette Ba'u, certified financial planner and founder of the Millionaire Insider. For over 36 years, I have helped pre-retirees and retirees turn their paychecks into guaranteed income, reduce unnecessary risk, protect their legacy, and design a retirement that's filled with purpose and freedom. Because true wealth isn't just about money, it's about confidence, clarity, and control over your future. So let's dive in. Long-term care without fear or pressure. In this episode, you're going to learn why long-term care planning matters most than many people realize, why long-term care isn't just a maybe, it's a high probability event, especially as we get older. Care doesn't always mean a nursing home. It oftentimes includes in-home care. In fact, most people want in-home care or assisted living or even short-term recovery to get back on their feet. And Medicare currently pays for like 100 days and then it's done. The real risk is needing care without a plan. And without planning, decisions are often made quickly, emotionally, and often at a higher cost. A plan allows you to stay in control of where you're going to receive care, the quality of care you're going to get, and how it's going to be paid for. When you plan ahead, you shift from reacting to making intentional, clear choices. I want to start by talking about some of the common myths about long-term care insurance and what's really true. So one of the myths is that Medicare is going to cover your long-term care. It's short-term medical care. It is not extended or custodial care. It may cover limited rehabilitation, but it's not going to assist with daily living. When I broke my leg, the woman next to me, as soon as they could get her out of that hospital, she was sent to a care place. She couldn't have surgery because she was 89. And she said, I've only got 100 days and then they're kicking me out and I have to be able to go home. And she was nervous about it. I don't blame her. Another myth is that you're never going to need it. Now, many people will need it at some point in their life and at least some care, even if it's temporary. The length and type of care can vary. That's why it's important to have flexibility in your planning. And that's why I personally like hybrid plans, which we'll talk about here in a minute. A myth: I can't just self fund everything. Self fund, most can because they underestimate the duration of the care, the total cost, meaning the cumulative cost over time, the impact on investments and income. You can easily spend $12,000 a month for years, as one of my clients did. And costs aren't just financial, they are emotional and lifestyle based. Without a plan, care decisions can be disrupted. Your retirement strategy can just go up in a handbag. Your investment plan can have problems, and your tax situation can also be an issue. You want to make sure that you've got somebody that understands how to coordinate your taxes and your deductions based on your overall planning, including your RMD planning. That is something that so many people miss. In fact, I recently had a tax expert miss it. And I'm like, you've got to do this. What about this? Oh, I had no idea. Got to be aware of that. Clarity around costs allow you to make informed decisions, avoid surprises, and integrate care with your overall plan. Now, I want to talk for 1 minute about hybrid plans. Most clients get hybrid plans. And what a hybrid plan is one that has dual purposes. It might have life insurance with long-term care, or it might have retirement income with long-term care, but it gives you some flexibility. And now some of the life insurance policy options, they're as good as some of the hybrid long-term care plans. So you really got to make sure you're working with a fiduciary and somebody that's qualified in that area, because you can save a lot of money by combining coverages and, really looking at what you need and what you can afford. Now, I probably need to say that a traditional plan is always best if you can afford it, but they are costly and it's kind of you use it or you lose it. And a lot of people don't like that. So always work with a qualified fiduciary, even when you're getting insurance. A lot of insurance agents aren't fiduciaries, which means they don't have to act in your best interest. So I really encourage you to do the research on that end. If you need specific support, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/support and we can help you on that venue. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is how planning protects not just you, but your spouse, your family, and your lifestyle. Without a plan, the burden of covering long-term care often shifts to a spouse who could already be overwhelmed. It is a lot of work to care for somebody. I have family members right now that are so overwhelmed, and their parents and their partners are in care, meaning they have care and they're still so overwhelmed because it's so much work. Oftentimes, adult children or partners are not prepared emotionally or financially. I've had clients, in the past, sometimes, they can't even use the restroom. So now somebody's got to bathe them, somebody's got to change them, and sometimes it's not physically possible. Planning creates protection in so many ways. It protects your partner's income and long-term financial security, as well as your own. It also helps preserve assets for your lifestyle and legacy goals, meaning who you want to leave money to. And it reduces the likelihood of making those emotional, irrational decisions that oftentimes come when we don't have a plan. It also can do a lot to protect relationships. When there's no plan, family members oftentimes have to make really difficult care decisions, and they have to navigate financial trade-offs. Is it more important for you to just be in a facility versus being in the best facility? Are you going to be somewhere where it's not ideal, or can you be somewhere where you're really getting the care you need? It helps to manage stress and that uncertainty that goes along with not knowing and not having a plan. A coordinated plan should answer key questions ahead of time. Who's going to make the decisions? How will the care be funded? And what level of care do you want? This creates clarity and it allows your family to focus on care, not chaos. I have seen situations that have been so chaotic where there's no one really been named, and then different people come forth and start wanting to be named. And sometimes they're qualified, sometimes they're not, and it can be a disaster. So having a plan is important. Early planning really has an ability to create flexibility and much better options. And for one reason, you can get much more cost effective solutions when you're younger. But time is one of the greatest advantages. When you plan early on, you have more options and it's easier to qualify for certain products. As you get older, it becomes much more difficult and costly. Waiting can limit your coverage options, affordability, and even the flexibility in your plan. When you plan early on, it allows you to integrate your long term care into your retirement income plan. So you know how much you can take from each bucket, and so it's not going to leave you or your partner in a dire situation. It also allows you to coordinate your tax strategy with your investment decisions and align your plan with your goals and values. This is not about rushing into a decision. It's about giving yourself time to make a really thoughtful one. When you plan early, you can design a solution that fits your life, not one that is just so limited that you don't have an ability to make a decision and you end up making one under pressure. Not allowing you to make an informed decision and instead forces you into making a decision under pressure, which is never ideal. All right, let's look at some additional key considerations. One of the issues is the type of care and why understanding this is so important. In home care allows you to remain in your house with assistance. Now, as many of you know, we're trying to build a house and think good thoughts. I'm hoping that it's going to come to fruition. It's just been a little bit of a challenge. But we actually have an area built out where we could have care come and live with us. But most people want to stay in their own house. I would like to stay in my own house as long as possible. Assisted living can provide support with daily activities in a community setting. And for many people, that's really effective. In fact, I really wish my mom would have done that. Like she could have gone to some, even during the day, like adult daycare and gone there and been around people, because I really think that would have helped her. It would have kept her more active. It would have kept her more social. And my mom was such a social, outgoing person that it didn't help with her losing that. Skilled nursing care offers more advanced medical support that many people need. Now, a lot of these facilities offer different stages. So you start out at one stage and you've got, some care. People come in, they help you with meals, they make sure you take your vitamins and your medicine. And then if you need more care, then you can go to a more advanced treatment, but it gives you options. And I find those to be really good. And I've got clients that are living in those that enjoy them, and it's been great. And then I have other ones that just have had full 24/7 care. I mean, probably the highest one is paying like 24,000 a month. It was a lot of money. And she didn't even have 24/7. There were about 4 or 5 hours that she didn't have anyone. It's expensive, and it can be really expensive if you have just unlimited support. But each option has different costs, different levels of care, and different emotional impact. Understanding what your preferences are and your goals is going to help you when you create your plan to make sure you're making the decisions that are going to work for you. And that is priceless. I want to talk about creating a plan versus not and the cost of waiting. Reactive planning often leads to fewer choices, higher costs, and almost always increased stress. Proactive planning allows you to explore multiple strategies and make decisions with clarity and confidence. It also allows you to coordinate all parts of your financial life, not just one, because you're being forced into it and you don't have any other options. And one of the things I want to add to that is my father-in-law died very quickly. My mother-in-law lived with dementia for over 10 years. And her care, this was several years ago, but her care was like 6,000 to 8,000 a month for 10 years. Now she had the assets to pay for it. But the point is, it was a lot of money. And I can remember talking to them about long-term care. Nope, they did not want long-term care. And I even remember another client. Nope, she didn't want long-term care. Just put a pillow over my head. Well, no one did that. And so she ended up paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for the care. All right, let's look at some emotional barriers and how to move past them. Common feelings that people share is that they fear aging and they also fear losing independence. Taking away somebody's keys, oh my gosh, that is a really, really hard stance. And there have been a couple of cases where I have agreed with the successor trustee that, yeah, that's probably a good idea. And the doctor said, oh, they're fine. I'm like, the person can't even see. I mean, it's so interesting to look at how some doctors, I'm finding that more and more doctors are like, oh, they're fine. That's just normal. They're just, losing their memory a little bit. And in almost all cases, we have had to sit down as a family with the person and say, we don't think it's smart for you to be driving. We don't think it's safe. We're worried about the liability. And we've had to talk them into it because their doctor is like, oh, they're fine. Like if you have cataracts, you can't see, or glaucoma, whatever it is, there's an eye disease where you can't see. I'm like, that is not okay. And the kids are having a fit. I'm worried. And it's just been interesting. And fortunately, we have had success at that. But there have been cases where some of the people have continued to drive for a while. One of the other things is having that uncertainty about your future or the discomfort in discussing care with your family, especially if it's somebody that doesn't want to acknowledge that they could need long-term care or that they could die. And I see that. I see some people really have a hard time with that. So you got to be sensitive to that. One of the things that I do see happens is when you're fearful, if you can make that shift, you become clear. You've got the clarity and you go from avoidance to empowerment. And the great part of that is you feel so much better because you have control and input over what could happen in your future if you need care. When you approach this with the right mindset, it becomes like basically a planning conversation instead of an emotional burden. It becomes how can we make sure you're going to be taken care of over your life versus, oh my gosh, we're going to have to put you in a home. So how you present it and how you have that conversation is critical. And again, if you and or your family need support on this, I encourage you to go to themillionaireinsider.com/support. Let's just recap on long-term care without fear or pressure. Long-term care planning is not about expecting the worst. It's about preparing wisely so that you can live a life you want to live, whether you need long-term care or not. When your plan includes how care is going to be handled, you remove so much uncertainty and chaos, and you create freedom and choices for your future. You protect your income, your assets, and your family, and you give yourself the ability to make decisions from a place of clarity, not pressure. And this is what a real retirement plan does. It coordinates your income, your investments, your taxes, and it protects your strategies so that everything is working together. It's coordinated. My friend, you can do this. And when you do it, you're going to feel the difference, not just financially, but emotionally, and so is your family. Now, if you want to create a plan that gives you clarity and confidence, including how long-term care fits into your retirement, I encourage you to access our masterclass at themillionaireinsider.com/MCC. Our Money, Confidence, and Clarity Masterclass is a great first step to really understand where you are, what matters, and the steps you need to take to create a financially secure life and retirement you love. I hope you enjoyed today's topic. It's such an important one. It's one that so many people want to avoid. So I really encourage you, take the masterclass at themillionaireinsider.com/MCC and really start having that conversation. If you know that you need to deal with long-term care planning or your family member does, I encourage you to access support at themillionaireinsider.com/support. I want to thank you so much for joining me. I'm Annette Ba'u. All international copyrights are reserved. Bye for now.